Good people, I'm recording here today because there's way too much echo in my room, so let's go. This is a low profile keyboard, and I feel like this category has not received that much attention from brands because it's too of a niche market segment, wireless and low profile. Why? If it was all that consumers were asking for, we would see tons of these things, but no. Logitech released one, this is the 915, and now Razer did too, to compete exactly with the 915. I hope they did good. So the Deathstalker V2 Pro from Razer is very much a copy your homework from Logitech, but bring everything properly into 2022. I mean, the 915 is still stuck with micro USB, which is a shame, while the Deathstalker properly introduces USB-C as expected. And so I have used the Deathstalker V2 Pro, the full-size version, for almost 2 months, just because I wanted to get rid of the honeymoon period and live with it and see what it's actually like on a daily basis, and not just discount it as like the better version of the 915, because it is better in almost every way except one. And of course, more on that later. Since they're in the same category of being wireless, high performance, and low profile, we'll do a head-to-head and see which Logi Razer keyboard is right for you. Airplane? Get out of here. What am I, at Eber's office? Come on. So both are available in full size or TKL, linear or clicky switches, but only linear on the TKL for the Deathstalker, with tactile switches for the Logitech only on the full size, and the white TKL option for the 915. Now I think the main advantage of these low profile designs are the fast switches by default, because the travel distance is shorter and actuation point is generally higher, so you can get really good at knowing when to press your movement keys and feel totally connected to, let's say, strafing and corner peeking, so any key press feels connected to your character in game. And that's pretty much the only advantage, as otherwise the low profile nature of the frame itself, at least for me, isn't really a benefit when compared to a standard type keyboard. Now form factor wise, they're very similar. Razer is a tiny bit more compact and slightly more angled at the back, while Logitech is completely flat on the surface, which feels kind of weird to type on, so I do prefer the Deathstalker in the comfort department by default without needing to raise any of the feet. And I will say it is a lot more stable on the surface, while Logitech kind of swims around because the little rubber bits don't have enough grip and it becomes super annoying. What is not annoying, however, is a message from today's video sponsor. The all-new G360A by Fantex, bringing updated design inside and out to refresh the P360A chassis with a legendary breathable, durable mesh front panel for improved cooling and that awesome illumination peeking through via the 3 DRGB front fans. The interior is now made to accommodate 360mm radiators at the front and top, longer GPU support, and user-friendly assembly. The dual color options are great for an all-white build with complementing cooler, fans, and PSU, so check out the new Fantex G360A cases down below. Welcome back. Let's talk about some general similarities, shall we? So both have a USB compartment at the bottom of the keyboard to carry the receiver with you, which is clearly labeled, so you know what's up. Both have gorgeous illumination peeking through with plenty of effects, but the keycaps are ABS on both keyboards. Not exactly ideal for a keyboard that Razer calls flagship. Now, in Razer's defense, even though these are ABS, I'm not sure why we don't have like double shot PBT keycaps that are low profile and are small, but they have this anti-shine coating on here that actually works very well, especially when compared to the Logitech one that immediately, as soon as you make contact with it, it's a shiny mess. Plus, it's a lot easier to break the keycaps on the Logitech one just because the two pegs are quite brittle, and I've already broken a few in my history of the 915s, while on the Razer one, they're user proper, nice and stable, MX stem, thank you very much. Plus, it's a keycap swimming pool, listen to this. Come on. So generally, the typing experience with such loose keycaps is not as enjoyable versus the Razer, plus our own expectations of the standard for typing experience on switches has elevated over the last couple of years, and so that's where Logitech is really falling behind. But Razer, on the other hand, understands where people are wanting to go in terms of the keyboard community space, and they are investing heavily to be considered worthy in that space too. I know it is totally not fair to compare them against like the GMK2 or the Wooting 60HE because those keyboards I've been using and I love them, but perhaps we should just to elevate the standard in switch quality and feel, even though they're not wireless and they're not low profile, so the comparison isn't really fair. So it feels like there is a bit of commotion around the linear optical low profile switches from Razer, but I actually quite like them. They have just the right amount of travel distance that is not super high. The actuation point is fairly high, which is nice. And when you bottom out, there's almost like rubber domeness to it, which I prefer when it comes to something that is low profile. You don't have this like hard reset. It's almost like kind of a soft cushiony part, which makes sense because each switch has a silicone dampener in there to both make the switch feel soft when you bottom out and also very quiet. Unfortunately, some switches are quite scratchy and stabilizers on some of the larger keys are not consistent. Some have rattling and they don't feel identical versus my TKL and the full-size keyboards. But in terms of overall sound and feel, it is much better versus the Logitech. So these Logitech switches are not smooth at all. They are more scratchy than Razer and they also activate lower at 1.5 millimeters versus 1.2. And the only reason you might want to consider the Logitech if tactile is all you care about, because that's the only available on Logitech full size or the white TKL model and not on Razer. Also on both keyboards, when you're in Bluetooth mode, some of the lighting presets and effects don't work. So for Razer, for example, I love fiery mode. It looks absolutely beautiful, but is not available on Bluetooth. You have to enable hyperspeed. The same can be said for the starlight effect on the Logitech 915, where you have to enable light speed to get all that beautiful lighting. I really like all the rubber buttons on the Logitech with easy switching between 2.4 GHz and Bluetooth, plus the really loose volume rocker that feels super cheap, but luckily has no latency issues. All the same features are found on the Razer 2, but are the back of the keyboard with 3 buttons for Bluetooth connectivity, so you can connect up to 3 Bluetooth devices, which is definitely better than the one on the Logitech. The volume rocker on the Razer is so much better with actual tactility and a lot of control, click to mute functionality and immediate adjustment as well, and this other button for the rest of your media control. Now let's talk about some cool features on the Deathstalker. First of all, you can do a battery check directly on the keyboard with these status LEDs giving you the remaining battery life with 5 LEDs on the full size or 4 on the TKL. And I absolutely love how the secondary commands light up when function is activated with corresponding Bluetooth devices. If any are connected, 1 to 3 are illuminated as well. That's brilliant. The new Deathstalker can also be paired to a single dongle with other Razer peripherals, which is very convenient, saving USB port, and it's definitely much more stable than before, but still I've encountered some delays with my inputs or not inputs catching up later, so I would not recommend it for competitive play, but for casual stuff, absolutely not a problem. Some really cool things on the G915 now is that we have game mode that disables Windows key, but in the software you can also select which keys you'd like to disable when game mode is active. If you have slippery fingers, this is a really cool feature. Plus, I really appreciate the battery capacity notification that displays your percentage, but also approximate hours of left of full usage. It also wakes up immediately with an instantaneous connection. You can also wake up the keyboard with a volume rocker. You cannot do the same with the Razer keyboard. The Razer keyboard, you have to physically press one of the keys, and the establishing of the connection is much slower versus Logitech. I mean, like a few seconds, but still it's slower. Now, to explore some issues, some really bizarre things are happening with the Deathstalker when I plug it into charge, where all wireless connectivity is disabled. So you cannot use it unless you're plugging the cable from the actual computer you're using it to. So Bluetooth is disconnected and the 2.4 GHz is disconnected as well, which is really, really stupid. The Logitech one, you can plug it in from the wall from different computers to charge, and it will still maintain your Bluetooth and wireless connectivity, as it should be. Both keyboards have aluminum top plates, which feel nice to your fingers. There are no sharp corners, but my gosh, they get gunky and dirty so quickly, especially around the spacebar and the arrow area. And when it comes to price, they're both absolutely ridiculous. 220 for the TKL, 250 for the full-size keyboard. Wow, Razer definitely priced it to compete with Logitech. Logitech keyboards now are slightly older, so they are definitely more discounted, but whew, if all you want is a full-size keyboard, definitely look elsewhere. But because they're so niche, if you want wireless, low-profile, high-performance keyboard, then definitely Razer and Logitech are your only two options, and therefore, that's why they're priced so high. But coming full circle, the biggest advantage of the Logitech keyboard over Razer is battery life. Simply because Razer is running optical switches that consume more power, and also I feel like Logitech's RGB brightness is slightly higher. So 40 hours at 100% brightness on a Logitech keyboard versus 40 hours at 50% brightness with Razer. So Logitech claims over 130 days without any RGB, while doing the same calculations for Razer, you're looking at around 50 days. So not too bad, especially because it's something on the desktop you can plug in to charge anyway, and they do charge in 3 hours to 100%. Nice and quick. And to end this story short, I feel like the Deathstalker V2 Pro and the V2 Pro TKL are like the matured cousins of the G915 and the G915 TKL, just because the switches are better, the keycaps are better, more wireless connectivity, USB-C, better volume rocker, it doesn't slide around on the desk. But for the price point, it's kind of hard to recommend either unless you're really all about wireless and having that slightly smallish Z height. And on that note, spend responsibly, my friends. I'm Dmitry. If you're picking any of these up, let me know what your experience is like, and I'll talk to you in the next video.